Oh my god, guys! The hype is real! Resident Evil 8 has finally been revealed! The moment I saw this trailer, I was just... Oh my god, something burst out of me! It's a feeling I haven't experienced in such a long time, ever since Resident Evil 2 Remake came out. Ever since Resident Evil 2 Remake came out, that feeling has just never, ever come back. Ever. Because Resident Evil 2 Remake has been such a disappointment, and then Resident Evil 3 Remake was okay, even though it still had the same holes as Resident Evil 2 Remake. But this game, oh my god, the things they have shown in this trailer, it's unbelievable. And it confirms so many of the leaks that have been put out onto the internet. And almost all the leaks are true. It's hard to believe that that is the case. And this is the first time ever in the history of Resident Evil that I am going to be reviewing a trailer. And it's quite a history, let me tell you, because Resident Evil 7 was the very first Resident Evil game that I ever did a broadcast for. It was like the very first game I ever did. And it was the very first Resident Evil game I ever played at launch. And now, with Resident Evil 8, it's going to be the first Resident Evil game where I actually do a deep dive analysis of the trailer. I'm just... Oh my god, I'm at a loss of words, guys. It's just... I'm so excited! I cannot believe they are doing this. This is going to be so great. But enough of the hype. Let's just get started on this deep dive analysis, guys. I'm just so excited for this. And something you gotta bear in mind, guys, the videos are not gonna have any audio, because this is the first time ever I've done this kind of importation process, so I'm not too familiar with how to get the audio. But it doesn't matter, because I think I would have been copyrighted if I had the audio on. So let's just take a look at this. So obviously you have the Peggy 18 thing that no one cares about. And then it begins. See, look, the Resident Evil engine. And based on the effects just then, you can obviously tell that it has an icy effect to it, confirming the rumors that Resident Evil 8 will take place in a snowy landscape. And I should also mention there were a couple of new leaks for Resident Evil 8 recently. I'll talk about them as I get through this trailer real quick, but let's still continue on. So the trailer first starts off with this story. His story comes to a close, which I'm assuming is referring to Ethan Winters. And then we have this narration, which I believe is being done by Mia, because in one of the leaks, it specified that Ethan and Mia were settling down in an ordinary life, and Capcom did confirm that this is the case, and that they also had a baby. So I believe Mia is telling this story to their baby, and I'm not too sure what story this is, but it seems to be reflecting a little bit on where Resident Evil 8 is going, because it's kind of mirroring where it's going to be going, as I'm pretty sure is the case. And that's Ethan Winters. Ethan Winters, I'm pretty sure, is the one that says, "What is with that creepy story?" And then Mia says it's just a local tale. And do you see the way she looks? I don't know if that's Mia or if that's somebody else. I mean, I would assume it's Mia because it looks like a pretty ordinary household, but Mia looks a little bit older in this. She has a different hairstyle for some reason. It's a little odd. I'm not too sure what that's about. Maybe the developers will explain. I don't know exactly how long this takes place after the events of Resident Evil 7. All Capcom said was that it takes place several years after the events of Resident Evil 7. But also, something else you gotta bear in mind, guys, you're gonna get a lot of nostalgia from Resident Evil 4. There's a lot of Resident Evil 4 thematic elements in this trailer, which is what I was expecting. You know, when I was first reviewing the leaks of this game, it definitely sounded like they were taking influences from Resident Evil 4, and I'm really glad that they are taking influences from Resident Evil 4, because Resident Evil 4 is one of the best Resident Evil games ever made. You have no idea the kind of influences that game had. But let's continue. So Mia says, "Quit being paranoid," and then it cuts to this scene over here, which I'm assuming takes place in the middle of the game. Now, I believe the character we're playing as is Ethan Winters. He's sporting a different kind of outfit. I mean, he does sound a little different in this part, but I'm assuming it is Ethan Winters because in the special message that the developers gave after they released the announcement trailer, they did show a couple of gameplay footage showing these specific hands. And they did say you're playing as Ethan. Like they did say they're marking like this game is marking the return of Ethan Winters. So I'm pretty sure this is Ethan Winters in this scene right here. And he was probably investigating some of the houses, and he just happened to stumble upon a house that had a villager in it. And he's very lucky that villager did not shoot him. I'm assuming this is one of the new characters, because one of the leaks did specify that there will be a female protagonist named Emily, and that Ethan Winters will apparently helping her find her father, and I'm wondering if this is her father. It doesn't look like it from some of the shots here, but as we progress onward, I mean, this doesn't look like Emily's father. Like, he looks kind of different to what you see later on in the trailer. But this is where we're going to be seeing some of the enemy types. So there's going to be a new enemy type, which is some kind of wolf-like creature. Did you see that? Did you see how fast that enemy was? Look at it. You know, like Resident Evil 7 was a fast game. Don't get me. Was a fast and slow game. Like it was a very fast, like slower paced game. And it complemented the survival horror aspect greatly. But I just wonder how Ethan Winters is going to handle such enemies. And with such fast enemies, I hope to God that they will take influences from Resident Evil 4 and they will put in some kind of realistic feedback to balance out these enemies. Because you can't just simply put in such fast enemies and just give them all these artificial handicaps to just feign lethality. So I'm hoping there's going to be some kind of feedback, because there's no way Ethan Winters could potentially survive these enemies. But just look at it. I'm still wondering, like, what kind of vector we're going to be seeing in this game. From what I've heard, it sounds like a virus, because a lot of the leaks did specify zombies. And apparently there would be zombies that would be inhabiting suits of armor. And when you think of zombies, you think of viruses, of course. And I would just imagine a virus would be the only thing capable of creating something equivalent to that of a lycanthrope. But just look at it. But as the scene progresses, this guy is going to fire at the walls, and this guy gets pulled through, and now we're going to get dragged through, which I'm assuming is a death animation. Maybe this is something that occurs if you take too long. Maybe this is like a time sequence, or maybe this is intentional. In fact, I'm still wondering if Ethan Winters is still infected, because if you remember back in Resident Evil 7, like there were a couple of moments where Ethan got his limbs torn off, but the only real moment that you need to bear in mind is the moment where Mia chops his arm off. The moment where Jack chops his leg off is not important because it's not canon. It's just simply something that occurs if you take too long to get a specific trigger done. So, I mean, like with how fast Ethan was able to co-opt his limbs, and with the fact that he's able to see all these hallucinations of Evelyn, and the hallucinations were one of the biggest symptoms of being exposed to Evelyn's and the E-type mutamycete. I mean, I'm wondering if he was cured, or maybe he still has the infection. Maybe they just didn't know about it. Because I mean, they did say in one of the files in Resident Evil 7 that the infection, it would be different for each individual, which is why Jack Baker was so different compared to Marguerite and Lucas, because of his extreme regeneration. So we'll have to see how the developers address that particular issue. I mean, it's a controversial issue. It's not clear as to whether Ethan was infected or not. Maybe it was just something you're not supposed to think about. But let's progress onward. So after this little moment, we get to this part over here, where it's just showing this little pathway here, which almost reminds me of the beginning of Resident Evil 7. I remember in one of the very first trailers of Resident Evil 7, they showed a very similar piece of scenery with a wall being on this side and the wall being on the other side, and then you have this narrow pathway. It's almost something very similar to that. So now it's just doing some of the really nice camera work. And this symbol right here, the developers did specify that this symbol is very important. In fact, in the special message, they did say that they were contemplating whether to include this in the announcement trailer, but I'm not too sure what this is. I mean, at first glance, I mean, it's easy to tell that there's the crow wings everywhere, and then there's something in the middle. I mean, I assume that thing in the middle is some kind of fetus. And because the reason why I assume it's a fetus is because in one of the leaks, it mentioned that there would be a moment where Chris kills Ethan's child, because apparently the child was infected. And maybe that builds into the central theme of the game. Maybe some kind of field development of some sort will play a role in this game. But although I assume it's more than that, because Capcom did say you have to look deeper into this. I mean, I'm not really an expert at this kind of stuff. I'm sure somebody else will probably figure this out. But I think that's what I believe it is. But we have a couple of scenes from the village area, and I'm not too sure what this symbol is. I assume that's the fetus symbol again, but just in the painted format inside of a 2D image. So, oh, and look at this. See that castle area? This is straight up Resident Evil 4 right now. Remember the castle from Resident Evil 4? This is exactly like that. I mean, in one of the leaks, they did say that Resident Evil 8 will be the darkest and most gruesome entry in the series. I think Capcom officially confirmed this as well. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do with this. And I even heard that this game is going to be a lot darker, and I mean literally darker, than the other Resident Evil games. So the flashlight is going to be especially handy in such situations. But I did hear that there would be a flashlight mechanic. And the flashlight could actually run out of batteries compared to the other Resident Evil games where the flashlight had infinite batteries. So that'll be very intriguing. Maybe you'll have to scavenge for resources like with the batteries. So let's progress onward, and let's go back to that doorway just then. I'm not too sure what that doorway there is portraying. It almost looks like the devil, and I think those openings in the door are keys of some sort. Like you see the little circles there. And I'm assuming that's what you have to do in order to open the door. Although it seems like a pretty large piece, so I wonder how you're going to be able to transport that. Or then again, it's cutting out the faces. Maybe that's part of an editing process. Maybe they're intentionally cutting out the faces because maybe this reveals something spoilerish. I mean, obviously you can tell there's some kind of human figure on the left, and then there's some kind of devilish figure. And the leak did specify that occultism will play a role in this game. So obviously the occult will. A lot of occults will worship the devil, obviously. So maybe this is some kind of interpretation of the devil. But let's see here. We have. I'm not too sure who this is. I assume that's Emily, or is that maybe Mia, for instance? I mean, I don't know if Mia is dead in this game or not. But this is very intriguing. And look at that! Like when you see the guy on the left, I think of the Ganado. Like there's a Ganado from Resident Evil 4 that looks a lot like that. And yeah, again, straight up Resident Evil 4 vibes right now. And I wonder if we're going to be fighting infected villagers. I believe in one of the leaks they did specify that we would be fighting such enemies. In fact, let me check over this real quick. Let's see. Okay, so the report claims the main enemies are zombies and pale human-like enemies that resemble ganados. Meanwhile, wolves that resemble lickers are also in the mix, as well as some medieval-esque zombies. The report also mentions werewolf-like enemies and a witch. It's not a werewolf-like enemy; it's a wolf-like enemy. Stop thinking of it as a werewolf. I mean, I know in the in one of the final shots of Resident Evil 8 in the announcement trailer, it does show a werewolf-like figure, but I still don't like to think of it as a werewolf because that just seems like out of touch with Resident Evil. But let's progress onward, and look at that. Okay, so this house looks very important, and you see all the scarecrows everywhere. I imagine these are probably for like sacrificial rites, or maybe they're just there for maybe they're just like, because I mean these are villagers and technically farmers, so I'd imagine they're using these as a way of scaring away everything, or maybe somehow this cult is using them as a way of performing sacrificial rites. But this doorway looks very important. I'm not too sure who that is. I assume that's the same guy from the other shot. I mean, he is seen with a gun several times, and then we have this figure here. I assume that's probably the interior of the house, because it doesn't look as fancy as the house you go into in one of the later shots of the scene, and I think that's Emily right there. So the lantern seems to be making a return, and maybe they're going to be like cutscenes where the characters are in third person, and you could probably skip them like you can in Resident Evil 7. So I think that's what this is. And there's that same guy again. There's all the crows, and they're showing this shot again. And you see, he has a gun now. The way the way his idle animation looks, it looks like he's some kind of playable character. I mean, I think I don't know if this was true or not. I don't remember if this was the case, but I believe in one of the leaks they did mention that there would be multiple playable characters. So maybe this guy's one of them. And I mean, this announcement trailer seems to be showcasing. It seems to be showcasing like the history of this village. Like in Resident Evil 4, they didn't really do that. They kind of had its own separate story in some kind of book. Like they had a book dedicated to Resident Evil 4 that showcased the events that occurred before the events of Resident Evil 4. So maybe they're doing something similar to that, but they're making it playable, which will be very interesting to see. And showing the baby again and showing that symbol again. And this is I believe this is Emily. I think this is Emily, and then this is probably her father. And see that? Look at that. That's the umbrella logo, and I think this is some kind of puzzle. It feels like a puzzle. And you can see all the emblems. I mean, I assume these emblems have to do with maybe like specific statues you find or something. So that'll be very interesting to see if they're going to be making this into a puzzle of some sort, or maybe this is some kind of architectural feature, possibly hinting at connection between the village and Umbrella. And I actually did hear that that blue umbrella is not as good as you would think. Apparently, like Blue Umbrella does have some darker parts to it, as one of the leaks did specify. So we might be seeing some kind of new take on Umbrella. Maybe some remnants of its old past will be infecting the Blue Umbrella. Maybe we'll see old members. That'll be very intriguing to hear. But we have another scene here. I assume that's Emily, and then they seem to be running away from somewhere. They're probably witnessing some kind of terrible event. We have all the really violent imagery. And okay, I guess in this part we're playing as Ethan, because I did specify that Ethan would be helping out Emily when it came to finding her father. So maybe they're just going around the village trying to ask for help, and then this guy just comes out and just pulls out his shotgun. We have a couple of animals, and that right there is I think that's the witch. We go back there just real quick. I think that's the witch-like enemy, and it does show the this figure here. Yeah, I wonder just what kind of like outbreak occurred in this area to create a link between bioterrorism and occultism. This is just insane. I mean, like with Marguerite did kind of behave like that when it came to how she treated the D series arm. You know, she considered it a gift to a gift from Evelyn, and that she wanted to keep it handy when Evelyn infected her with the mold. And that's why I was in that specific place in the old house area. So, you know, I guess this vector of some sort is driving everyone mad. So we have a burning complex, and I believe this is one of the main antagonists. I mean, I don't remember the leak specifying a female antagonist. I mean, it did specify a male antagonist, which I believe is someone who appears in this announcement trailer. So apparently the main antagonist of the game is a mysterious count living in one of the aforementioned castles, and his name is Alan. And he's said to be the leader, or at least a high-ranking member of the Connections. And okay, oh no, this is it. This is the mention of the female villain. So complementing him is a secondary villain of Natalia / Alex Wesker, and it sounds like Blue Umbrella is not only involved, but okay, so I've already talked about that. Okay, so something similar to Natalia and Alex Wesker. So this will be very intriguing. I did hear that hallucinations will be playing a role in this game. So I mean, like Alex Wesker focused a lot on fear, so maybe they're trying to create something similar to Alex Wesker and also Alexia from Code Veronica, because I did get some vibes of Resident Evil Code Veronica from this character, because she seems like an aristocrat, and the Ashford family were aristocrats who used their wealth to help Umbrella in their research into bioorganic weapons. But we move on now, and look at that. So that looks like a new enemy type, or maybe that's part of a hallucination sequence. I mean, we did see bugs appear in Resident Evil 7. But, I mean, those were bugs infected by the mold, and Marguerite just had control over them, which I believe is what the actual lore was. So it might be some kind of hallucination sequence. I'm going to leave it at that. Again, like, I'm not too sure what vector the game is going to be opting for. I don't know if it's going to be opting for some kind of virus. I mean, it's obviously not going to be a parasite, because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's definitely not a fungus. I mean, I did specify in one of my Resident Evil 2 remake videos that the game would be focusing on Evelyn's origins as a leak specified, but it doesn't sound like that's true. This doesn't sound like Evelyn's origins, because Evelyn was created by the Connections. I mean, even though in a leak it did specify that that Alan was probably a high-ranking member of the Connections, so maybe it will center around Evelyn's origins, but it's taking rather drastic turn. Or you know what? Maybe Ethan wasn't cured, and his hallucinations have progressed so much. And because Evelyn is dead, Evelyn can't exactly influence him any further, so maybe Ethan does have a bit of his control, but the infection is slowly progressing. I mean, it's probably just a slow process because of the fact that Evelyn isn't speeding up the process. So maybe the mold is actually showing itself here in this hallucination sequence. That'll be very intriguing to see. And look at this. This reminds me a lot of the Baker family. So like Resident Evil 7, it all took place in a very isolated incident. So I mean, I like the fact that they made that change to Resident Evil 7. You know, you're so used to all this bioterrorism happening out in the open when all those people who claim to be saving the world, this and that, they're completely ignorant of what lies beneath their noses and beneath their feet. That's exactly what Resident Evil 7 was trying to portray. The fact that these characters might be thinking they're saving the world, but in actuality, something else is festering, like deep underground or in some isolated area. I thought that was one of the coolest transitions between Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 7. And Resident Evil 8 is doing the exact same thing with showing that transition from Resident Evil 6 to Resident Evil 8. So again, the isolated nature of this game means that there's going to be less of these protagonists. So obviously there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe there's more of these occult members, considering that the whole entire village is affected. So maybe these are just like some standard enemies that you fight, and then the center character is actually the main antagonist, and she's the one who's directing this cult. But let's progress onwards. Oh, and look at that. This is showing a portion of her mansion, and which looks absolutely beautiful. Look at this. Look how beautiful this is. I mean, the way I recorded this doesn't properly portray how beautiful this area looks, but this is definitely showing the PS5 at its best. And they actually do show a bit of gameplay footage in the special message in this particular area, so I can't wait to show you guys. And we have another of those lycanthropic enemies, as I'm going to definitely call them. I'm not going to directly call them a werewolf. I'll just call them lycanthropes, because that just seems to be a better name, because they look kind of like that. Although this might be a zombie, like maybe that evolution into the wolf-like enemy, it's probably a step process. So maybe this is kind of before that stage. So maybe he's in the process of transforming into that wolf-like enemy, and that's why he looks a little bit more zombified. And then we have this one right here, which, look at that hammer. That hammer looks a lot like the Executioner Magini's hammer from Resident Evil 5. So they're referencing Resident Evil 5, or they're taking influences from Resident Evil 5 with this particular enemy, which is a really cool idea. And it definitely displays a level of intelligence with this enemy. Maybe this is actually one of the main antagonists, but he's actually still possessing his intelligence, so that's why he's able to wield such basic weaponry like this. Although not so basic weaponry, considering it's a giant hammer. And you can see all the other enemies in the scenery. If I just move this slowly, you can see that you can see a guy on the left with some kind of pickaxe of some sort. And then you have the other guy on the right. I'm not sure what he's wielding. He doesn't show what he has. And then we have this scene, which I believe is Ethan's house, because it did mention that Chris happens to just appear in Ethan's life, and he just takes out the child. I mean, Chris does take out somebody at the end of this trailer, but I don't know who it is. It doesn't look like a child. It looks like somebody else. I wonder if that's Mia. Yeah, I'm not too sure. And that's Emily, I believe. And I think that's the main antagonist right there. I think that's Alan. He looks like it. He looks like a main antagonist. He reminds me of Salazar with the way he's presented in this announcement trailer. Like, Salazar was constantly a thorn in Leon's side, so I imagine he's going to be kind of the same thing, although a lot more aggressive, considering that they did say that this game would be dark and gruesome. So he's probably going to be a lot more sadistic, maybe more sadistic than Lucas. In fact, I wonder if he's actually the one who instructed Lucas to do work on the mold. Because I mean, it takes one sadistic killer to understand another sadistic killer. And he takes off those glasses, which remind me of Bloodborne's glasses. Because you could put such glasses on in Bloodborne. I put those glasses on my character, ironically. So that's kind of how my character would actually look. I mean, I would put a ponytail on the back of his head, but this guy doesn't have a ponytail. Okay, and there's a sadistic smile of his. And then I think that's some of Blue Umbrella's like special ops guys. So we'll definitely see how they play a role in this game. And then it looks like this female antagonist is taunting Ethan right now. And then we have the full-fledged lycanthrope, as I'm calling them. And then we have this scene right here. Like, look how large this is. And the leak did specify that this game would be more open than Resident Evil 7 and previous Resident Evil entries. So it's going to be so interesting exploring this whole entire village area and just understanding the story behind everything. You know, that was one of the things that really intrigued me about Union in Evil Within 2. You know, you had all the resonance points, you had all the different structures, you had a history. You were learning the history of this whole entire town as you were trying to save Lily. And it looks like they're going to be doing something similar here, where they're going to be letting you explore this whole entire village, and they're going to be a lot more subtle with the storytelling to let you piece together all the information. And I think that's a really nice idea. It's going to be so intriguing to see how this is going to work. In fact, let me actually go to that particular part of the leak. So, oh yeah, and yeah. So it'll be more open than the last few entries in the series. Yeah, definitely. And then we have the title card, and we see the highlight of the 8, and there we go, Resident Evil Village. Awesome. And then look at this. Look at Chris Redfield. Look at this. So he looks vastly different from his Resident Evil 7 counterpart. He looks like a cross between, or not even a cross. He looks more like his Resident Evil 6 counterpart. He doesn't look anything like his Resident Evil 5 counterpart when it comes to his face. But when it comes to how he looked in Resident Evil 6, I think that's a better comparison to make. You know, he has like the hairstyle. He has the expression on his face. He has the more roundedness of his face, and you know, he feels like a little bit more buff compared to his Resident Evil 7 counterpart, even though Resident Evil 7 Chris was absolutely amazing. He's a badass. If you haven't seen my Not a Hero DLC playthrough, or not even playthrough, like Not a Hero DLC walkthrough, without taking any damage and without taking any without restarting whatsoever, you gotta check it out. I was panicking so much throughout the whole entire time. Like, that DLC is so difficult for all the right reasons. Every single mistake I made was my fault, and it took me months to get it done. And just hearing Chris say his dialogue and then having me repeat it, oh, it was a great experience. But this is the part where Chris takes out somebody. I don't know who that is. It looks like Mia, because it looks like a very tall individual. But I don't know. This will be very intriguing to find this out. And that's the end of the trailer. So it says it's coming out in 2021, which is fantastic, as I predicted. And I mean, and then we have a Resident Evil 4 remake in 2022, which I'm not excited for whatsoever. So I'm not going to think anything of Resident Evil 4 remake, even though you know, with the way the villagers are portrayed, it sounds like a very interesting idea to see how the Ganado would look in Resident Evil 4 Remake, but with who's directing Resident Evil 4 Remake, I'm just not looking forward to it. I mean, I hope it's like the Resident Evil 7 team, not the Resident Evil 2 Remake team, because that team just wasn't very good at what they did. But now we have the special message from the developers, which ironically are the same people who did the special message for Resident Evil 3 Remake. So yeah, they're explaining everything you've seen so far. I'll fast forward this a little bit more, just so we can get to the real meat of this. Yeah, I definitely like their reasoning for why they named it Resident Evil Village rather than Resident Evil 8. It goes to show that they're willing to take a risk. Like, you know, this is the most like risk-taking Resident Evil game I've ever seen. This is why I love Resident Evil 7, because it took so many risks. And then with Resident Evil 2 Remake, they just went back to just playing it safe, and they listened to a fan base that doesn't understand the very core pillars that define the Resident Evil game. Like, that game really pissed me off. And then Resident Evil 3 Remake, I mean, they retained, like, they regained some of what made a Resident Evil game, but it was still not that good of a Resident Evil game. I mean, I definitely liked it more than Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I am doing an updated walkthrough of Resident Evil 3 Remake. I mean, I was in the middle of doing my updated Resident Evil 3 walkthrough when this trailer just happened to appear, and I got so effing hyped for it. Like, I've never been so excited for a Resident Evil game in so long. Like, long live Resident Evil. I hope this series just will always continue to innovate, because without Resident Evil, we would not have gaming. That's just my opinion on it. I feel like without Resident Evil 1, we would not have gaming, because Resident Evil 1 was the most influential title ever, because it was the very first survival horror game ever made, and with Resident Evil 4, it influenced like so many third-person games to come with the introduction of the over-the-shoulder perspective and so much more. And no other third-person game can compare when it comes to Resident Evil 4's feedback systems. The only games that can are The Evil Within and The Last of Us. I mean, Dead Space does kind of do it to some extent. I mean, specifically with Dead Space 2. But I mean, even still though, like, Dead Space 2 did have its problems. But even so though, it felt like a worthy successor to Resident Evil 4. Like Last of Us, Evil Within, Dead Space 2. That's exactly what I would that's exactly what I would consider to be the spiritual successors to Resident Evil 4. But let's progress onward. So again, we have this. I like to play on the design and the simplicity in the name. Yeah, great explanation right there. Yeah, Peter Fabiano was definitely one of the most important people in Resident Evil 7. He actually played himself in Resident Evil 7, and here he is saying that Resident Evil Village will be available on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S, and Steam. And thank God it is not releasing on PlayStation 4, because they want to take full advantage of the PlayStation 5's capabilities. They said that this game will not have any loading screens, which is going to be great. And Resident Evil 7 didn't have any loading screens for a while. I mean, they did have a couple of loading screens when you're going from like the Baker family household to the ship area, and then like, but that's really it. And then and then from that point onward, it was just a streamlined process. Like it really worked well, and they're using the RE engine, and it looks so much better. So it's definitely an updated version of the RE engine. Yeah, the RE engine is a really great system. It's a really great engine for bringing to life this game, and they're showing the exact same things again. We were able to take all that we learned from those titles along with our internal development efforts. See all that we learned. Like, what are they going to like? The only things they're going to possibly learn from Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake is how to rarely screw up a Resident Evil game, and despite the fact that I still have a bit of skepticism for Resident Evil 8 because it's being developed by a team that doesn't really understand what made the games before Resident Evil 2 Remake actually good. That's why I'm like I still feel like I have a lot of respect for this game. I cannot begin to tell you how hyped I was for this, despite the skepticism. So showing the exact same images as before. So they show a bit of gameplay here. Yeah, see, we can take developers' visions to new heights. Same thing here. So they're saying they're upping the ante on the action. See, I feel like Resident Evil knows how to do survival horror when it's focused on the action, because that's really where the more lethal but fair enemy types are going to be present. Do you have any idea how fast the enemies, like how fast-paced Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 were? And you had some of the most dangerous enemies ever. Like, if you were to put any of those enemies in the older Resident Evil games with how they played, you would never survive them. If you put Vertigo in Resident Evil 1, you would never survive at all. So, again, like focusing on the action aspect is not what's going to make a survival horror game bad. Action horror and survival horror are the exact same thing. If you want to hear my thoughts about this particular argument, which is honestly an argument that shouldn't even exist, and I think it's voiced by people who just want to dwell on ignorance, check out my Code Veronica X walkthrough, specifically part 3, because it's just such a stupid argument to make. Action horror, survival horror, literally the exact same thing. The only reason people try to create action horror is to dwell on ignorance and to just dissociate from what Resident Evil truly is. But yeah, so yeah, see, no load times and immersive audio. And also they did reveal the PlayStation 5 console, so the PlayStation 5 looks absolutely amazing, and I hope it actually I hope it has a lot of really cool features that will allow me to really get into this game really well. So we're just going to continue on. So see, the game takes place a few years after the events of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, but with the way Mia looked in that one shot at the very beginning of the announcement trailer, it looked kind of strange for it to be taking place a few years. So, again, that's probably not Mia. It's probably some other character. And it follows the story of protagonist Ethan Winters, best character ever. He is the underdog of the Resident Evil series by far. See, okay, so Ethan's gone back to living an ordinary life, but of course, it wouldn't be a proper story without a new challenge to overcome. Yeah, this game is too good. Yeah, I mean, they did say that the leak did specify that the gameplay for Resident Evil would be very similar to the Not a Hero DLC, so I'm really glad that's going to be the case, because the Not a Hero DLC's gameplay is going to be fantastic, or not going to be fantastic. It was fantastic, and I love this artwork here. So they said that Chris looks darker and more brooding than in the earlier Resident Evil appearances. I mean, I wonder how he's going to behave compared to his Resident Evil 5 counterpart, because in Resident Evil 5 he was definitely he was definitely a very dark character, considering the fact that he was undergoing a lot of trauma from losing Jill, and without Jill he doesn't really feel like himself. I mean, you can definitely tell like how much of an impact Jill has on him, and with Resident Evil 3 remake, I'm honestly surprised that Jill wasn't like wanting to see where Chris was. She didn't really make any statements about that compared to Resident Evil 3, the original version, where she was making a lot more statements about Chris, and that she really cared about him. Like these two care about each other. And in Resident Evil Revelations, they did the same thing. Resident Evil 5, they did the same thing. And like him losing Jill at the end of Lost in Nightmares was definitely a traumatic experience that really that really made him see the world in black and white, and that's why he came across as being a very dark character. And they're saying that he's going to be a lot darker and more brooding than in the other Resident Evil games. So this will be very interesting to see. So this must be a very serious event, and the fact that an isolated incident is making him like more brooding compared to how he was in Resident Evil 5 and 6, where he was dealing with not so isolated incidences that were actually occurring like throughout a larger scale. That just goes to show like the kind of impact such isolated incidents have compared to worldwide bioterrorism. The last thing worth mentioning in terms of the characters here is the village itself. Yeah. So here's some of the artwork they show of the village. I assume that's the house that you meet that old man in. And you see a couple of this. Like, look how messy this area looks. I like I like all like that random pot on the fence. I like the damaged chair. I just like all these random items everywhere. I like just how like it showcases the aftermath of the destruction of this village. It really has a nice tone to it, and something that's really befitting for survival horror. I really appreciate this. Now, I don't know what those are hanging on the trees. I assume those are just bodies or something else. I mean, I wouldn't really know because I recorded on a very small screen, so I can't really pinpoint exactly what this is. But let's move on. Showing the same image again, and there's the house again with the antagonist house. Let's talk a bit about the game's design, and yeah, so this is the first-person perspective. So this game is going to be in the first-person perspective, which I'm already liking, because the first-person perspective really benefited Resident Evil 7's take on the series, and it made you feel closer with the environment. It made you feel more immersed in the environment. It really added a lot of detail. Like, I especially like the detail on the guns. You really got to see the detail on Ethan's hands. You got to see the detail on the guns, and you got to see the moments where you would shoot a molded in the head and blow its head off, and all of its guts would spill onto the gun. So your gun would be caked in guts. And then when you got stung by insects, Ethan's hand would actually be inflamed a little bit, which was really cool. Like, I feel like Resident Evil 7 has a lot more detail because you have to be so close with everything in the environment. And Ethan definitely has the best hands. I know that sounds very weird, but I love his hands. Ethan has by far the best hands ever. Just with his hand gestures alone, it conveys a lot of character. And the detail on his hands, just the way his hands looked, it looked fantastic. Somebody made an article about Resident Evil 7 with the way the teeth looked, and just like that person, I really feel like the hands looked fantastic as well. So I'm really appreciating the first-person perspective here. Look at this is the knife. So the knife looks a little different. That looks a little bit more like a kitchen knife rather than a pocket knife that Ethan got back in Resident Evil 7 when he got it off the sheriff. So I wonder if there's going to be some way to get a different knife, because in Resident Evil 7 you did get the survival knife, but you got it very late into the game, and I imagine they'll probably do the same thing here. Maybe there's a way to upgrade your knife's damage, or maybe there's some way of getting a new knife. This will be very intriguing, and in fact, I wondered if there's going to be any kind of like stalker-like enemy, because Jack Baker, he wandered the house a lot, and he was a constant threat. And it's the same case with Marguerite, and I wonder if there's going to be something like that. That'll be very intriguing, because I mean, a lot of the Resident Evil games have had that before. Resident Evil 2, you had Mr. X. Resident Evil 3, you had Nemesis, and then Resident Evil 6, you had Usnak, and then Resident Evil 7, you had Jack and Marguerite. This will be very intriguing to see. Okay, so same sense of heightened tension and fear. Already appreciating that statement. Here's a quick look at the game running intention. So this is some gameplay. Look at the way. Look at this. Look at this. This is so good. In fact, just to make sure just to actually split, just actually get back to this gameplay very quickly, I'm going to create a split here. Just look how beautiful this game looks, and I especially like the way Ethan's holding his gun. And Ethan seems to be holding his gun more so with both hands compared to just with his single hand. I think that's a very nice small detail to definitely showcase the experience he gained from Resident Evil 7. So once again, the details on this game, spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And I really like how they captured the essence of Resident Evil 1's mansion here. I mean, the thing I really the thing that I really liked about or actually no, they captured more so of the Resident Evil 7's essence, and they combined a little bit of Resident Evil 1's essence. Because the intricate architecture of Resident Evil 1 was something to be fascinated by. I did find it to be rather arcadey, and it just seemed kind of unrealistic for a mansion to have that. Whereas with it did feel kind of dead as well. Like there wasn't a lot of life to really be had in Resident Evil 1, because it was a game from like 2002, I believe. But whereas Resident Evil 7, the Baker household had all these intricate architecture features to it, but it was still a very standard manor of some sort. And it had a lot of life to it. I liked exploring every single room of the Baker household for such a scaled down version of the Resident Evil 1 mansion. Now, it looks like Ethan has some kind of... Oops, my fault. So it looks like Ethan has... it's called a limb, or Lemmy, sorry. And so this is the inventory system. So it looks like the inventory system is a little bit different this time. So apparently the pistol takes up a little bit more, way more slots than usual. The pistol in Resident Evil 7 took up 1 slot, but apparently it's taking up... what is that, 6 slots? That just seems a little odd. And then you have the knife only takes up 2 slots, it seems. Oh, sorry, not 6 slots, 4 slots. And then you have the health in the top left, so it looks like there's a health bar system, or maybe maybe that's actually not really a health bar system. Maybe it's still showing the fine icon, but you could just see there's a portion of that bar that's not filled in with green, which I assume is the reason why I consider it to be a health bar rather than a heartbeat monitor. And then they have the healing item right there, so it looks like first aid meds are going to be returning, and you see something in the top right, 100 lei. I don't know what 100 lei means. Is that supposed to be some kind of currency in the game that you get? Will this be the return of shops? Because in Resident Evil 7 you had the antique coins, and thankfully you didn't get any kind of antique coins from crates. I never appreciated the idea of the treasures in Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. They destroyed any chance of you getting ammunition if you got very unlucky, and they were very useless. If you needed to resort to the shop or the skill tree system or the merchant from those games, then you're just playing those games wrong. You're not playing it like a survival horror game. You're not playing it like a Resident Evil game. You're just playing it like a scrub. You're playing it like someone who doesn't understand the true mentality associated with a Resident Evil game, which is why I never ever use such systems in those games. In Resident Evil 7, I did use the antique coins, but it was only mainly to get the Scorpion Key in Madhouse difficulty, and that was the only thing. So I'm glad they made the coins optional, but it looks like treasure might be returning. Either that, or it's probably some kind of online currency. I highly doubt it because it doesn't seem like this game will have a multiplayer component, thankfully. I mean, if this game does get a multiplayer component, I know for sure it's going to be really bad. Because Project Resistance is the poorest excuse of content by far. And Ellen0325 mentioned this in one of my earlier live streams of Resident Evil 3 Remake, but Project Resistance is Capcom's excuse for lack of content, and I 100% agree with him, and I hope that's not going to be the same case here. So I'm just going to treat it as if it's a treasure you get in the game. So let's progress onward. So we have this again. So this is the part where they say it's important to look at this in detail, and then that's actually everything they show. And that right there has been both of the videos for Resident Evil 8. And just seeing those videos alone got me more hyped than the amount of trailers they released for Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake combined. In fact, at least like with Resident Evil 2 Remake trailers, I really felt like they were like so forceful with being in your face that it's a survival horror game, and it just spoke to a lack of confidence. With this one, they didn't seem like it was like they didn't have to be in your face so much with saying that this game is survival horror. The game spoke for itself. And that speaks to a level of confidence with this game, and I'm really glad. And that has been my deep dive analysis of the Resident Evil 8 trailers. I mean, if you would like to call it a deep dive, I mean, I probably didn't do the best job at doing a deep dive, but at least I clarified some of the leaks that were released with this game with some of the articles before this game released. So I hope you guys get hyped for this game. I mean, I know for sure certain individuals, I will not mention their name because they despise me and they make me sick because they used to be my no, never mind. Yeah, I'm not going to mention them at all. I don't want to talk about those people who don't have any clue as to what they're saying, and they behave so much like adolescents when it comes to how they judge the Resident Evil games. But those people despise me to no end, and I know for sure they're going to voice all kinds of dumb complaints about this game. So, F them. I'm giving them the middle finger right now, and you can't even see it. But I am going to be so in love with this game. I'm going to reiterate this for the millionth time. I'm going to absolutely enjoy this game. I've never been so hyped for a Resident Evil game before. I actually screamed when I saw this trailer for the first time. It's just incredible. This is Capcom going back to what it knows. I feel like old Capcom is going to be directing this game, not new Capcom. Because new Capcom, all they do is just make mistakes. Like how they tried to make Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake have all these mechanical problems, and they even tried to link the NEF of Parasites to Resident Evil 4. Like, why would they do that? That just presents with so many issues with mechanics and then with story continuity. It's just dumb. And the fact that this team is finally releasing a sequel after so long, this series needed a sequel finally, just to see where the series is going when it comes to bioterrorism. So I am just in love with this game right now. I hope you guys feel the same way. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.